It was just past dusk on a cold November evening in a quiet suburban town outside Chicago. The kind of night where the air smelled faintly of wood smoke and wet leaves, and porch lights flickered against the creeping darkness. Families were settling in for the weekend, the usual hum of mundane life weaving softly through the streets. But in the blink of an eye, everything changed. A piercing series of gunshots shattered the calm. Quick, sharp cracks that echoed through the neighborhood. Windows rattled. Dogs barked frantically. A mother's trembling hands dropped her phone as she screamed for her children to get down. And when the chaos finally ceased, the world was left grappling with a tragedy no one could have foreseen. A mass shooting at the heart of a community that believed itself safe. This is the story of Oakwood, Illinois, a town of barely 15,000 souls, where people knew their neighbors, kids rode bikes without helmets, and the local diner was as much a gathering spot as the town square. Mark Peterson was the kind of man you'd see every morning at Joe's Diner. Mid-40s, weathered hands from years of factory work, a quiet smile always ready beneath his thick beard. His wife, Linda, was a schoolteacher, known for her gentle patience with the rowdiest third graders. Their daughter, Emily, was a bright-eyed teenager who worked part-time at the town library, dreaming of college far away. Nothing about the Petersons suggested the darkness that would soon engulf their lives. Across the street, the Murphy family sat down for dinner. Tom Murphy, a Vietnam veteran, was carving the roast while his wife, Sarah, tried to soothe their youngest son's scraped knee. Upstairs, their teenage son, Alex, was online gaming, headphones on, oblivious to the slow fall of night outside. In a town like Oakwood, news of violence was usually distant. Occasional car break-ins, maybe a bar fight or two, but nothing like the horror about to unfold. The first shots rang out just after 7:15 p.m. Inside a small community center hosting a charity bingo night, dozens had gathered, laughter filling the room. Bingo cards shuffled and daubers tapping softly. The scent of greasy fries from the kitchen mingled with the nervous energy of hopeful players. Suddenly, the doors slammed open. A man, mid-30s, wearing a long coat and baseball cap pulled low, stood silhouetted against the harsh hallway light. His eyes were cold, his hands steady as he pulled out a rifle. Confusion swept the room. People froze, then screams erupted. Gunfire erupted fast, relentless. The sound was like thunder in the enclosed space. Some scrambled under tables, others pushed towards exits. But the chaos was overwhelming. In the blur of panic, a mother dropped her toddler, who began to wail. Mark Peterson dove to shield Linda, but a bullet tore through his shoulder. Blood blossomed on his shirt. Emily, nearby, collapsed, eyes wide with shock. The world reduced to smoke, screams, and the metallic taste of terror. The police arrived minutes later, sirens wailing and lights flashing in the rain-slicked streets. But as they secured the scene, questions mounted. Who was the shooter? Why here? Why Oakwood? Initially, authorities identified the man as Daniel Reeves, a local recluse with a troubled past. Neighbors described him as quiet, never one for conversation, but no signs of recent violent behavior. His social media was sparse, but contained cryptic posts about justice and retribution. However, further investigation revealed something chilling. Daniel Reeves wasn't acting alone. Digital forensics uncovered encrypted messages linking Reeves to an underground online group advocating extremist ideologies, a network far more dangerous than anyone suspected. Among the data, disturbing plans for coordinated attacks in other states surfaced, suggesting Oakwood was just the first target. Even more unsettling, Reeves' family described him as a different person in the weeks leading up to the shooting. He'd locked himself in his room, obsessing over conspiracy theories and speaking of an impending reckoning. Back in Oakwood, the aftermath was devastating. The scent of burnt rubber and spilled coffee lingered outside the center. Ambulance crews rushed victims to hospitals, while families waited in the cold, clutching each other tightly, eyes hollow and voices choked. Linda cradled Mark's bloodied hand in the emergency room, the sterile smell of antiseptic filling the air. Outside, the wind howled, whipping dead leaves across the parking lot like mournful ghosts. Emily's school canceled classes. Teachers lit candles in her memory. The town's heartbeat fractured, replaced by grief, anger, and fear. As the nation watched the tragedy unfold, investigators raced against time to dismantle the shadowy network behind Reeves. Arrests in neighboring states hinted at a broader conspiracy, one that threatened the very fabric of public safety. But the deeper the probe went, the darker the secrets uncovered. Unexplained surveillance footage, missing evidence, and whispers of cover-ups by agencies sworn to protect. Was this massacre truly the work of a lone, disturbed man, or part of a more sinister plot? The answers remained elusive, and as Oakwood struggled to heal, the chilling truth loomed. A reckoning was coming, one that no one was prepared for. Daniel Reeves grew up on the outskirts of Oakwood, a place as ordinary as any, yet one that left scars invisible to the casual eye. Friends from childhood described him as withdrawn, a quiet kid who never quite fit, but no one could have predicted the storm brewing inside him. His teenage years were marked by isolation and bullying. The worn linoleum floors of his childhood home, the muffled laughter from neighbors' yards, and the cold silence of his bedroom all blended into a landscape of loneliness. Neighbors recall the smell of old books and burnt coffee drifting from his small study, where Reeves spent hours online, searching, reading, and slowly descending into a maze of conspiracy theories. A scent of stale cigarettes lingered in the air as he scrolled through forums dedicated to grievances against the system. Phrases like the shadow government and hidden enemies became his daily mantra. But Reeves was not acting out of blind rage alone. Federal agents uncovered encrypted chats between Reeves and other members of an online collective calling themselves the Watchers, a group pledging to expose corruption and purge the system. The conversations were filled with coded language and chilling intent. Plans for attacks, lists of targets, and references to the Great Awakening painted a portrait of a well-organized, secretive network operating in the shadows. The digital trail led investigators across several states, from small towns in Michigan to urban sprawls in Texas. Arrests followed. A programmer in Detroit, a militia sympathizer in Austin, and a former military officer in Ohio. The investigation revealed a tangled web of connections between isolated loners and radicalized cells, the kind of network no one expected in the heart of America's heartland. Meanwhile, Oakwood grappled with loss. Linda Peterson's voice cracked as she recalled the moments after the shooting. I could hear Mark coughing, struggling to breathe, but he kept telling me to stay calm, to hold on. Emily, she was so brave. She told me she loved me before she closed her eyes. Across town, Sarah Murphy sat by Alex's bedside in the hospital, her fingers tracing the outline of his bruised face. He's lucky to be alive, she whispered. But this will haunt him forever. Families gathered in churches and community halls, their tears soaking into wooden pews. The familiar hum of the town was replaced by a quiet ache, the kind that lingers long after the sirens fade. Just when it seemed the case might reach closure, investigators stumbled upon something far more disturbing. In Reeves' locked safe, recovered from his home, was a notebook filled with names, dates, and cryptic symbols. Among them, high-profile politicians, media personalities, even law enforcement officers. One name stood out, a senator from Illinois known for his tough stance on gun control and homeland security. Why was he listed? The question sent shockwaves through the investigation. Whispers of political corruption, secret alliances, and cover-ups began circulating. Under mounting pressure, authorities issued a public warning. More attacks could be imminent. Oakwood was placed on high alert. Schools closed, streets emptied. The town's fragile sense of safety shattered once again. Behind closed doors, federal agencies debated how deep the conspiracy went, and who else might be involved. A key piece of surveillance footage from a gas station just miles from Oakwood surfaced. It showed Reeves meeting with an unknown man hours before the shooting. The man's face was obscured, but his posture was confident. No hint of fear, no trace of hesitation. Who was this mysterious figure? Was Reeves a puppet in a larger, darker game? And what did the senator's name in the notebook truly signify? The answers lay buried in secrets too dangerous to uncover. Secrets that threatened to ignite a nationwide crisis. In the weeks after the shooting, Oakwood's community center was transformed from a scene of horror into a gathering place for healing. The air was thick with the scent of freshly brewed coffee and worn books donated by libraries across the state. Voices, tentative at first, grew stronger with each meeting. Linda Peterson sat quietly in the corner, her arm in a sling, eyes red-rimmed but resolute. She was the picture of a mother and wife battered by tragedy, yet unwilling to surrender. Beside her, Sarah Murphy clutched a folded letter from her son Alex's therapist, her fingers trembling but her spirit unbroken. "I don't want anyone else to suffer like we did," Linda said one evening, voice steady but raw. "We have to hold them accountable. Not just the shooter, but everyone who let this happen." From this seed grew Oakwood United, a coalition of survivors, families, and concerned citizens demanding answers and action. They lobbied local and federal officials, pushing for transparency in the investigation. They called for stricter gun laws, better mental health support, and accountability for agencies who might have missed warning signs. But the fight for justice was far from straightforward. Opaque government reports, redacted files, and cryptic denials painted a frustrating picture. Oakwood United's leaders uncovered roadblocks, key witnesses reluctant to speak, evidence inexplicably lost, and agencies citing national security to withhold information. Linda's phone buzzed late one night with an anonymous threat: "Stop digging, or there will be consequences." The air seemed to close in. The same fear that had gripped the town now targeted those who dared to demand truth. Emily Peterson's best friend, Mia, shared her story on local radio. "I remember the night like it was yesterday, the sound of gunfire, the panic, then silence." Emily was more than a victim. She was a dreamer. "Now I dream for her too, that no one else loses their future." Alex Murphy's therapist described his struggle to reclaim normalcy. "He's haunted by flashbacks and survivor's guilt, but every session, I see a flicker of hope, the will to live beyond the tragedy." Months of relentless pressure finally forced a federal oversight committee to launch a public inquiry. Documents leaked to Oakwood United revealed that Reeves had been on the radar of multiple agencies, flagged for extremist views and disturbing behavior, but bureaucratic failures let him slip through the cracks. More shockingly, evidence showed that some surveillance footage and communications had been deliberately withheld. In a powerful town hall meeting, survivors confronted officials. Linda stood before the crowd, her voice echoing with pain and resolve. "We will never forget, but we will also never be silent." Oakwood demands justice, not just for us, but for every community at risk. Tears streamed down faces as others shared their stories, a collective vow to fight for change. Legislation was introduced, inspired by Oakwood's activism, aimed at closing gaps in mental health services and improving coordination among law enforcement. The extremist network began to unravel as new arrests and indictments followed. Though the scars remained, the town found strength in unity, turning grief into action. Oakwood's story is a mirror reflecting a nation's struggles. The fragility of safety, the dangers lurking in silence, and the unyielding power of human resilience. But questions linger. How many more communities are waiting in the shadows? How long until the next tragedy? And will the justice Oakwood fought so hard to achieve be enough to prevent it? The fight for justice is ongoing, a reminder that vigilance, empathy, and courage are the only shields against the darkness. This is not just Oakwood's story. It's the story of every town, every family, every survivor. Thank you for joining us through this journey. If you found this story moving, please subscribe and share. There's more to uncover in the fight against violence and injustice. Together, we can shine a light on hidden dangers and help build safer communities. Join the conversation because every story matters and every voice counts.